Good morning, everyone. Just a few announcements before we begin. I just want to thank Amanda Esco, who is going to be giving a homily today, and our fearless and courageous and often anonymous people in the balcony up there, Tristan Moore and Don Walton, who are bringing us live to the world. And then Nikki Blackburn-Fuller and Lissa Lander, who are our cantors today. Of course, David Owens leading us as a music director. We still have a couple of auction items available. If you would like, you can reach out to Stephanie in the office if you want to find out, including a meditation retreat, which maybe is a good thing to think about right now. And we, most importantly, really, what I want to talk about is we have a town hall that will be taking place this Thursday at 7 p.m. Is it the same as this regular Sunday link? It's the same as the link that you're on right now. So you'll be able to just go to it from the homepage. So let us begin our worship together under a moment of meditation by Nick Cardell. For thoughtful, conscious life, all creation is precariously contained in a mended cup of meaning. It is the cup from which we drink our lives, the cup with which we drink to life. It is a cup which is broken and mended, over and over again. Each time an era passes, a way of life is destroyed, or someone of significance to us dies, we cry out that our cup is broken. And so it is. Yet somehow, together, we do find a way to mend it all over again. Now we are faced with the task of mending once more.
There's a folk tale about a person lowered down a deep shaft, lower and lower, until the darkness was so dark that they could touch it with their fingers. The damp so cold that it seeped into their bones and left them shivering. Finally, without any warning at all, they hit rock bottom. When they were pulled back up, the others asked, "So what did you find down there?" "It was cold," they answered. "What else?" "It was dark," they answered. "What else?" "There was dirt," they answered. "What else?" "What else do you want?" they answered. "I hit rock bottom, and it was cold and dark and full of dirt." "Well, we know it's full of dirt," the others retorted. "It's a mine." "But where are the diamonds?" Humans are relational. Our world is built upon our interdependence with one another. It's what makes society. We are born from the body of another person, live our lives surrounded by others, at home, at school, at jobs, in the community, the structures of our society. We cannot separate ourselves from other people. We are connected. While we are all connected through this interdependent web, we're individuals. We are our own people with thoughts and feelings, desires and needs. Sometimes we work in consort with our web. We are connected. And sometimes people choose to break the web. Intentionally, unintentionally, the effect is the same. Our web is broken. I told this story earlier this year, but one Sunday in Little Chapel, elementary-age kids were building a web with themselves and a piece of rainbow string, when suddenly the string snapped. Seeing this break, one child rushed up right away to repair it. Our web was fixed. Sometimes it's easy for us to jump up right away and fix the string. Some people want to jump up right away and fix it and move on. Others need to think about it. Feel the broken. Consider their options. Feel the break, hold it in their hands, and then make a choice with how to fix it. Our theme for February is calling. When we discussed this topic as a worship team, the question arose, what is this church called to do in this world? What are we becoming? How we choose to respond when things are broken will choose what we become. We are individuals working in a covenantal web in relationships with one another. And when the web is broken, people are left behind, choosing how to respond. Sometimes it's cold and dark and full of dirt. And when we've hit rock bottom, that's when we can find the diamonds.
Now is the time for our offertory, and I'm sort of thinking about this. I just want to say, Amanda, I thought that was fantastic. Truly, it was really good homily. I was thinking about it as I was sitting there, like holding myself. It's cold in here today. Be glad you're home. What is it? What broke? Our boiler thing broke. We need to fix it. So you're gonna see a thing on your screen that helps us pay for it. We're all huddled. There are people with blankets in here. So there's lots of things that we spend money on that you graciously give as a gift to us, and some of it's music and singing and religious education for our kids, and sometimes it's heat. So we're saving you money right now, but perhaps you can find your way as you get the QR code or the link for. Are we using Givelify still? What are we using? We're still using Givelify to help us repair the boiler, heater, whatever the thing is, and to keep this place running well. Thank you so much. before I begin, I was just thinking about humans, right? Like, it's cold in here, and yet we still need to be like, I need a foot between each other, you know? Like, we should all be like, everybody should be in one row, like sitting next to each other. But social distancing is important. It's a funny thing. For those who watched the video that we released on Friday, this first part of the sermon is a bit of a recap. For those who didn't, what you're about to hear will likely come as a shock. Please know that I'm available to speak with anyone who needs time to process what I'm about to tell you. In mid-November, I fired Margaret Kosarik-Bean for what I assumed at the time was incompetence. For well over a year, the board and the finance committee had been requesting access to our QuickBooks files and our bank statements for reconciliation purposes because her monthly reports were always confusing and inaccurate. Month after month, she resisted their requests, offering one excuse after another. But it was soon apparent that she had to be let go because we needed better financial controls over our books. 2 days later, I hired Starlin Chaston to help clean up our accounts and implement the changes people had been asking for. The board, the finance committee, and the ministers had already begun implementing a new financial oversight structure by this time, and Starlin helped us accelerate the process. For those who don't know Starlin, she was the former chair of the finance committee and works professionally as a corporate auditor. In addition to cleaning up the general accounting, she also began retrieving some retirement funds that had been paid into Margaret's account instead of mine, and to look to see if it happened to others, and which led her to looking more closely around to the monies that Margaret had received overall. She soon found some manipulations in QuickBooks that caused her to investigate more thoroughly and discovered what appears to be a misappropriation of funds that totals almost $69,000. In short order, we met with the board, the finance committee, and the members of the congregation with a history of in law and corporate finance to discuss how this happened, what the implications are, and what to do next. We discussed a few scenarios, including trying to reach a private settlement to recover the money, but in the end, we decided it was important to press charges because we felt that it was our responsibility to protect anyone who might interact with Margaret in the future. We still plan on pursuing the money, and we've filed a civil suit, but justice is also an issue, and we did not want to see her move on to another organization or individual with fewer resources and oversight measures than ours. By making it a criminal matter, however, this does mean that we give up some control over the outcome. Once this enters the justice system, the DA has a certain latitude in how to proceed. They may offer a plea deal. They may or may not require restitution, and a variety of other possibilities. We hired a law firm to help us navigate the case and to push for restitution. But as we weighed the possible outcomes, we kept returning to the issue of justice and our concern for people who have been financially victimized. And if keeping someone else safe meant that we had to give up some control over the outcome, well, we decided that was a fair trade. However, it does largely remove the process from our hands, which can feel quite empty and disempowering. We've formed a task force to guide the process with the lawyers and the DA, have asked the Finance Committee and new treasurer to oversee a full forensic audit, and we have outsourced our accounting to a local firm with a long history of working with churches. This firm will report directly to the board instead of the senior minister, so they can never be blocked from having a full fiscal review. Many of these changes were already in process, and really the very reason that we were able to discover the alleged misappropriated funds. And for my part, I sincerely want to thank Starlin Chaston for her calm, investigative work. I want to thank the board and the finance committee for their non-anxious collaboration and insight. I want to thank Rick Langer and Don Walton, who have helped guide the task force. And I want to thank Reverend Monica, who helped me create the environment that supported this work. Just about a month has passed since Starlin first alerted me to the problem. We moved with intention, but our approach has been measured and methodical. In terms of how we've handled the technical dimension of this violation, I feel as good as one can in a situation. But now we need to speak on how we will handle the emotional and spiritual dimensions of it. This case will likely move slowly, more slowly than our anger, hurt, sadness, frustration, resentment, perhaps even rage would like. Allegedly, we have been stolen from, violated, manipulated, and gaslighted. Sometimes we feel this in our body as heat, but I've always resonated with Dante's understanding of hell. The lowest level was reserved for those entombed in ice, unable to feel any warmth or affection, unable to touch or communicate. It is a separation from community, from other people. This often happens when people have been violated. We go numb, and we build walls around us to make sure that no one makes us a victim again. Often when churches experience a deep wounding, they react by implementing rules. And years later, newer members often wonder why the church behaves the way it does, because they weren't around when the wound happened and nobody wants to talk about the scar. I hope we don't do this. I don't want to numb. I want to feel. I want to feel the sadness and the anger. I don't want us to stay there, but I want us to have the courage to face it so we don't end up entombing ourselves because of the actions of a con artist. There's been a poem resting on my lips since the day Starlin called me into her office to break the news. It's by Ellen Bass, and it goes like this. To love life, to love it even when you have no stomach for it, and everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hands, your throat filled with the silt of it. When grief sits with you, its tropical heat thickening the air, heavy as water, more fit for gills than lungs. When grief weights you like your own flesh, only more of it, an obesity of grief. You think, how can a body withstand this? Then you hold life like a face between your palms, a plain face, no charming smile, no violet eyes. And you say, yes, I will take you. I will love you again. There is an odd comfort in this poem, and this comfort does not show up in any solution or instructions that she would have me follow to relieve my pain. The comfort shows up in the knowing that she understands what I am experiencing. And this is no mild disappointment. This is anguish she is writing about. When everything you hold dear crumbles like burnt paper, heavy as water, more fit for gills than lungs, an obesity of grief. This is anguish. It is fortunately not a place I live in often, but I've been there. And the comfort comes from knowing that I am not alone in that experience. That this is not something that I'm making up in my head, that I am somehow weaker than the rest. The comfort is in knowing that this is something we all share. I know that I could stand before this woman and cry, and she would say, yes, cry. It's painful. And there would be no judgment. A little earlier this week, I was struck by a very common phrase that we all use. People say it all day long as a greeting, a salutation to the person we have encountered. I went to buy a cup of coffee. And as I got to the counter, the barista said, "How are you?" And there I was faced with a dilemma. You see, the morning had not been going very well. I knew some of what we were dealing with, that we were going to file with the police on Friday, that only last week we launched our pledge drive, and I am nervous that this will adversely affect our ability to fund the community. And I knew that I was going to have to write this sermon and share this news with you. But there were so many other things I didn't know, like how to help you, how to comfort you. I was upset and resentful, which is a horrible way to start your day. I mean, if that's your frame of mind at 8 a.m, it becomes a very long day. This was an obesity of resentment. So here's this sweet barista, some student at the U, saying, "How are you?" I didn't know how to respond. I stared for a minute, and I said, "I'm okay." Which is not the answer to the salutation, right? In our culture, when someone you don't really know says, "How are you?" your answer is, "Ah, right, I'm fine, I'm good, how are you?" Right? Some other innocuous nicety, regardless of whether it's true or not. It's just a salutation. Most people don't really want to know. They don't want to be burdened with an honest answer to this question, which is, I'm filled with fear and resentment, and I came to get a coffee so the caffeine would alter my mood and make me feel a little better about my life. Ugh. That's a non-starter. Where's she supposed to go with that? So I lied. I'm okay. And on many levels, I am okay. Right? I live in a great apartment. I love my career. I have great friends and family that loves me. I have food in my refrigerator and my cupboard. I am okay. And we are okay. As a congregation, we have great leadership, a strong endowment, plenty of money in reserves, a committed and invested congregation. We are okay. And Ellen Bass's poem is not about material things. When she says everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hands, she isn't talking about material, but rather our place in the world as living beings. There are people debating suicide right now who have plenty of material. What they don't have is the feeling that someone understands their suffering. There's no sense of camaraderie, of companionship in the pain. They are dying because they are all alone. They feel all alone. They are entombed in ice. We often call this sensation of being all alone the darkness. Darkness as a word is often used to indicate desolation and suffering. And in our culture, suffering is bad. We all suffer. But we're not supposed to tell anyone about it because that means we're failures. And as Americans, we're people of the light. We're people of the promise of more. We sing sentimental anthems of glory and triumph. And those who suffer in our culture suffer because it's their own fault. Our story is one of a people who are constantly making an effort. We call it self-help, but really it's just an attempt to control our feelings. And we contort ourselves through consumerism and drugs and sex and TV, not to feel the darkness, because our culture tells us that the darkness is shameful. And in the process, we become complicit with an idea that does not serve us, that isolates us from the only real solution, which is sharing it with another person who understands and who is not ashamed to say they understand. We have been trained to fear the darkness rather than to move into it, rather than to accept darkness as part of being alive. We were born out of the darkness of the womb. The shadow of our being is far greater than that which shines in the light. If we were only what could be seen in the light, we would be very shallow people. The darkness gives us depth because we can't control it, because we can't muscle it into a shape that we can dominate as our culture demands. We don't like it, we fear it, we reject it, and in doing so, we reject so much of who we are, and many of us become daily little liars. No, I'm okay. I'm great, I'm fine. Yeah, the world is falling apart, but everybody's fine. Anais Nin writes, "And the day came when the risk to remain tight as a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And so it is with many of us. We try to do this on our own. We don't want to burden somebody with our suffering. I got this. Until I don't. And then we really don't. Suffering is one of those things that we manage until we just can't anymore. And in this odd moment, the darkness reveals itself for what it really is. Not what we thought it was, not what we imagined was there, as we peered out into it from our well-lit rooms." William James, writing in The Varieties of Religious Experience, comes to the conclusion that regardless of how someone has a spiritual experience, be it the crashing open of Zen enlightenment or the imperceptible change that happens over years, one thing happens. One thing we all have in common: total ego collapse. The spiritual experience is the space where we can no longer dominate, where we can no longer control. Our ego is useless, and God, or whatever term you feel more comfortable with, envelops us. 800 years ago, Meister Eckhart prayed, "God, rid me of God." Right? These aren't the words of a man who knew it all and was in control, but rather a man who understood that his desire to control, including his own idea of what God is doing, was harming him and making him suffer. This is why pain is such a great teacher. We are forced into becoming a student. We have no other option. It is not so much that we surrender, but that we are surrendered. No effort can be made, and so we accept and we are opened to the spiritual experience. And here, suffering becomes a savior. Instead of it being all about us, we come to understand compassion. Instead of feeling like a victim, we come to understand the meaning of justice because we can identify. Because when someone cries out, we can respond, I know what it's like. And there may be nothing I can do for you except hold your hand and hold your face and see you. But each of us knows that often that's enough. The theme for the month of February is calling. And when I outlined the thematic journey for this year's preaching calendar, I had a very different concept of calling in mind. I wanted to help you engage with the idea of who you are called to be so that you might better understand what kind of minister you would like to hire next year. But this week, a different calling appeared. Not one that replaces the other, but complements it. It's a calling of restoration. a ministry of renewal. It is a calling to hold one another's faces and to summon the courage to look into each other's eyes and say, this hurts, but it's not the end. Sermons on the Japanese art of kintsugi have become something of a trope, but I think this is because we live in a world that is constantly breaking and being restored. For those of you who aren't familiar with kintsugi, it's the art of repairing broken pottery with lacquer and gold powder, and instead of trying to hide where the break occurred, the gold draws attention to it, perhaps even honors it. The brokenness does not make the pottery trash. The restoration makes the pottery more valuable. And this is the calling we now face, to be artisans who take what has been broken and make it more valuable than it was before. I do not want to hide the brokenness. I do not want us to entomb ourselves behind walls we think will protect us, but actually cut us off from each other. I don't want to work more and stay busy to avoid the pain. I want to hold your face. For me, the spiritual journey is not about some personal salvation handed to me by some deity. It is a spiritual and emotional quest for integrity. A calling for restoration and healing begins with acknowledging that our ministry occurs in a field of brokenness. But it doesn't end there. And it's not so much that we trudge onward in faith as much as realizing that faith appears when we can be vulnerable, open, and honest with one another about what we are experiencing. And ultimately, the quest for integrity leads to the pursuit of justice for all people. It is our quest for integrity that establishes our faith. It is the gold that binds the seams together again. I don't know if every spiritual experience requires suffering, but I would guess that it does, at least on some level. For the ego to collapse, for us to leave behind the story of who we think we are, in order to step into the beloved darkness, where there are no boundaries, we have to say goodbye to something we have known, maybe even something we have treasured. And in every goodbye, there's grief. An ego collapse sounds hard, but it's actually the rejection of the ice tomb. There is solace that comes when we are ready to be honest with who we are, with our brokenness, because in it we find the healing of other people. This is the meaning of a spiritual community. As bad as we might believe we are individually, no one is going to turn away. Rather, there is a turning towards one another. You are suffering. I know suffering too. Pain is managed when it becomes a community affair because God is a communal experience. It is in the generative and creative space of these communities that vulnerability is valued, not shamed. I believe in the holding environment of a spiritual community where compassion, justice, and restoration is born in the shared experience, where we can be honest and where we can become emptied, and others can share the beloved darkness with us in our quest for integrity. This is the genius of Ellen Bass's poem. You think, how can a body withstand this? Then you hold life like a face between your palms. No plain face, no charming smile, no violet eyes, and you say, yes, I will take you, I will love you again. This poem is not so much about pain as it is about redemption that we all experience by holding one another's face. It is your face that I hold. It is my face that you hold. We are recovering from a lie. We are not alone. Together, we might move into the darkness, all of us held, so we might find a world of compassion and justice made real by our understanding of one another. Amen. Source of life, God, my darling, let us leave this worship knowing what it means to be a spiritual community. Knowing that we are on this quest for integrity, and that our quest is found by the witness that we offer, the witness of the worth and the dignity of every being. And awaken us to that great bond, the great collapse, the holy darkness, where all of our control and all of our boundaries and our walls fall away, and we become interwoven entirely in a thing that has no name, but we simply just call Source. And fill us with grace. We are facing a challenge right now. And the sirens of anger and resentment and fear are going to be alluring. May we find compassion and nurturance, tenderness, and care as we embark on this ministry of restoration. Go in peace. Amen. Thank you again to Alyssa and Nikki and David, Amanda, Don and Tristan, to all of you at home. Typically, I have no idea what time it is, but typically the coffee hour starts at 12, but I think we're going to start it right away. I just need to go out, and then I'll join you very soon in the coffee hour. Thank you for coming. Service is ended.